The United Nations recently decided to investigate Israel for defending her citizens against a Muslim Brotherhood Hamas terror organization in Gaza, recognized even by Western countries as a terror organization. What is there to investigate? Nothing! Folks, as you know, social media censorship is growing. The best way to support our video work for Israel is to subscribe to our video newsletter on pulseofisrael.com and to share our videos. If you are already a subscriber, then thank you. 2 additional ways to connect with and support Israel, they are so simple. 1, click on this link to help us strengthen Israel by strengthening Judea and Samaria. It's simple, everybody. Just click on the website and choose the best option that works for you to strengthen Judea and Samaria. And number 2, enjoy the beauty of Israel whenever you want. No matter where you are in the world, you can enjoy our online virtual tours of Israel. Just visit israelisbeautiful.com and choose the virtual video and activity package that works for you. Hamas started shooting 4,000 rockets at civilian targets in Israel. They committed a double war crime because they launched the rockets from civilian areas in Gaza. Yet, instead of using basic logic, investigating Hamas, punishing Hamas, and supporting Israel in trying to save as many innocent lives as possible from the evil Hamas, the United Nations and world nations will be investigating Israeli war crimes and throwing billions of dollars in aid to Hamas to rebuild Gaza, as well as rebuild their terror infrastructure to get ready and attack Israel next time. To those who do not know, Arabic has no word for ceasefire. The closest term in Arabic is hudna. As definitions.com aptly describes for us, a hudna is a pause to regroup, rearm, and prepare for the next flight, end quote. It is a term that comes from the first such hudna made by Muhammad, called the Hudna Treaty of Hudaybiyah between Muhammad and the Quraysh tribe centuries ago. What too few people understand is that Yasser Arafat called the Oslo peace process a hudna. So while Israel, the Jews, and the world all celebrated the Oslo peace process as peace in our time with the Palestinian Liberation Terrorist Organization, Arafat, the head of that organization, told the Arab world that it was a strategic pause to regroup and rearm to continue the fight to destroy Israel, as is this hudna today with Hamas in Gaza. Unfortunately, too few people in the world cared about what Arafat was saying in Arabic to his fellow Arab Muslims then, instead listening to the lies he was saying in English. Most of the world, including Israelis and Jews around the world, continue to make the same mistake today, not listening to what's said in Arabic by our enemies, only listen to what they say in English. Going back to what happened with Hamas and Gaza, unfortunately, too many people and Jews are believing the lies of the media and choosing to blame Israel instead, and excusing Hamas, even though Hamas is totally at fault and Israel has every legal and moral authority to respond as she did. Let's talk through 3 of the big lies that people are repeating in their arguments, blaming Israel for the recent Hamas attack on Israel. Lie number 1. The Gazan Arabs are fighting the occupation, hence they have every right to use whatever method possible, including shooting rockets at innocent Israeli civilians. No, Hamas are not fighting the occupation. Hamas actually occupies Gaza. Israel expelled all 10,000 Jews who lived in Gaza back in the year 2005, destroying the 21 Jewish communities that were there and removing all the IDF soldiers, all in trying to give away our land in exchange for peace. It didn't happen. Then after the Palestinian Authority took control, Hamas did a military coup, killing the Palestinian Authority officials and taking over Gaza. So while the world gives billions of dollars in aid to Gaza, Hamas officials live like kings in Gaza, while regular Gazan Arabs are terrorized and occupied with little water or electricity. Why? Because Hamas does not care about their own people. Rather, they use their own people in Gaza as pawns in the PR war against Israel. Pictures of poor Gazan Arabs with sewage on the streets of Gaza refugee camps look much better than the mansions, malls, and hotels that the Hamas officials in Gaza enjoy. Nobody in the media asks why the world aid is making Hamas officials rich instead of them using that financial aid from the world to build new housing, water, and electricity infrastructure for poor Gazans and destroy the refugee camps. No, media is not interested in that. So basically, Gaza is occupied and terrorized by Hamas, which even uses their own civilians as human shields, shooting their rocket launchers from civilian areas, schools, and hospitals. The more Gaza civilians who die used as human shields by Hamas, the more the Western media, politicians, and the world who prefer to ignore the truth, the more they bash Israel. This then empowers Hamas to continue using their civilians as human shields, leading to more deaths on both sides. So why should Hamas stop using their own civilians as human shields if the world media, including the New York Times, uses the images of the dead Gazan human shield children to then bash Israel? The world and all the good-hearted people who claim to care about the poor Gazans and their children, they are actually leading Hamas to kill more of their children as human shields. Let's go to lie number 2. Israel started the conflict by evicting Arabs from homes in the Shimon HaTzadik Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of Jerusalem. There are so many lies in this one to debunk. First of all, nobody was evicted. No Arab was evicted from any home. It is an ongoing court case, for decades actually, about evicting 4 Arab families who were living in Jewish-owned homes in Jerusalem. The court was actually supposed to deliver a verdict, most probably to evict the Arab residents, since many court cases and appeals over the decades, yes, decades, have concluded that those families should be evicted since they have not paid their rent for decades. Hence, it is logical that a court will end up evicting them, as a regular eviction case. The enemies of Israel and Hamas instead have used this legal case to blow up the Middle East. So no, Israel is not to blame for Hamas shooting rockets at Israel because Hamas is upset about a court case where 4 Arab families have failed to pay their rent for decades and haven't even been evicted yet, which they might. Let's go to lie number 3. Israel started the conflict by forbidding Muslims from praying on the Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day, and then Israel used excessive force against the Muslims on the Temple Mount. Alright, let's break this lie down as well. Number 1. No, the Muslims were not forbidden from praying on the Temple Mount that day. I was supposed to go up to the Temple Mount that morning when the war broke out. The Muslims were up on the Temple Mount already. Instead of praying, they were preparing for a huge ambush for us Jews and the Jews praying down below at the Western Wall. Just look at all the stones they prepared on the Temple Mount to throw on us, on all us Jews. Number 2 to bash this lie. Because of the planned violent ambush by the Muslims on the Temple Mount, the police then closed off the Temple Mount to all Jewish visitors. So I was then forbidden to visit the holiest Jewish site in the world on Jerusalem Day. The police then entered the Temple Mount to stop the Muslims from throwing stones on all the Jews at the Western Wall. I was right there at the Western Wall when this all happened. All right, so there you go. Those are the 3 lies circulating in the press around the world, convincing many people, including Jews, that Israel is to blame for Hamas starting a war and shooting 4,000 rockets onto Israeli civilians. Absolute craziness. So the question is, how do we beat these lies? Well, we spread the truth, spread the truth, spread the truth. But it gets even worse. There are plenty of good-hearted people and many Jews who actually do care about the truth in Israel, yet when they see this horrendous media coverage blaming Israel, and these people then complain that Israel is doing a horrible job explaining herself. Only we explain ourselves better. Then they go to social media advising that the best way for Israel to win the PR war is for Israel not to defend ourselves, so that no Gazan children's, aka Hamas human shields, would die. These good-hearted people are so afraid of the optics of the media lying about us that they are willing to endanger innocent Israelis and innocent Gazans who also get killed from the Hamas rockets that fall in Gaza. Israel not protecting ourselves means everyone's endangered. So let's talk about the real reason Hamas started shooting rockets at us. What did we do? So while some pundits will talk about the political tension between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, the elections that Abbas canceled and therefore Hamas is angry, that is really all more situational excuses for this point in time. But the real reason is the same reason Hamas has been shooting rockets at Israel for now over 20 years, and why Fatah and the Palestinian Authority have been terrorizing us. Because we, the Jewish state of Israel, exist, and they want to destroy us, period. That's why. The charters of both Hamas and Fatah, which runs the Palestinian Authority, include that their purpose is to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. Couldn't be clearer. Let's look at the Hamas charter. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. But as I said, it's not just Hamas. The world even prefers to ignore the fact that the Fatah movement, the movement that runs the Palestinian Authority, also calls for Israel's destruction. This isn't just me saying this. It is the United Nations itself, as it documents here on this link. Quote, despite repeated assurances to amend it, the Palestinian National Charter remains unchanged, calling for Israel's elimination by any military means. And here's just one place in the charter of Article 9, armed struggle is the only way to liberate Palestine. Thus it is the overall strategy, not merely a tactical phase. The Palestinian Arab people assert their absolute determination and resolution to continue their armed struggle and to work for an armed popular revolution for the liberation of their country and their return to it. So here we see the Palestinian Authority, its charter is about destroying Israel. That is the one and only reason why Hamas shoots rockets at Israel, because the purpose of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, is to destroy Israel. Yet, each and every time, they just make up excuses, trying to blame their violence on us, on Israel, in order to swing public opinion and around the world to their defense. And it works! Honestly, guys, it makes no difference what Israel does or doesn't do in response. They always use violence against us to destroy us, and they always lie to the world media, and their lies fill the newspapers, websites, videos, Western political talking points, etc., regardless of what Israel does or doesn't do. Now, this is the most important point of all. With it all, remember, truth is on the side of Israel. Justice is on the side of Israel. Human decency is on the side of Israel, and most importantly, the one above is on the side of Israel. The Jewish people have experienced much worse times than this. Even with the scary growth of anti-Semitism all over the world right now in the name of the anti-Semitic blood libel called Palestine, we Jews have experienced much, much, much worse times than this. 2,000 plus years of persecution, pogroms, exile, etc. Please do not lose perspective. Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. With all that I said earlier, please remember how blessed we are, the Jewish people, to today live in a generation where the Jewish people are sovereign in our ancestral homeland with our own army to defend ourselves. Our ancestors who experienced thousands of years of persecution and exile would be so jealous of us. Do not let the negativity of what's going on today or the media get you down. Focus on the positive. If you are a Jew, then strengthen your Jewish identity. If you are not a Jew, strengthen whatever identity you are. And finally, to everyone, strengthen your pro-Israel activity in spreading the truth about what is going on here. And help your family, friends, and neighbors know the truth so they do not believe the lies of the media. And finally, stay positive, everyone. Even though we can't win the media war, we will win this bout against our enemies who want to destroy us. As the Jewish people say in every Passover, in every generation we have enemies who rise up to destroy us. Yet they are all gone, and we, the Jewish people, are still here. Don't forget that. If you are Jewish, be proud Jews. Be proud of your Jewish heritage. Be proud of the Jewish people, and be proud of the Jewish state of Israel. Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people are alive and well. Hold on to that and keep the perspective.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.